Today, we're going to take on the issue of fly control, which is frustrating to everyone that I talk to. No matter where you're at in the United States, it is unseasonably warm, and it seems that the flies are already a problem. Joining us today is Clifton Castle. He's a third generation entomologist, and his company is called Kunafin. And they have a very interesting approach to fly control before they become a problem. Clifton, give us a thumbnail sketch of your approach to fly control.
Most people approach to fly control is reactive. And, you see flies, you spray, by the time you're spraying, that fly's already lived a life and laid about 1,000 to 1,500 eggs in her lifetime. And that just created the next generation. So you're always chasing the problem. What we do at Kunafin is go after the source. Okay. So flies don't just appear, they develop and they go through a life cycle. And, 85% of that cycle is happening underground. It's out of sight, it's in the manure and decay. And that's where we focus. So rather than treating the symptom, which is the adult fly that you see, that we're attacking the problem before it ever even hatches. And that's the whole philosophy, preventative, not reactive.
And you use something called fly parasites. Is that some kind of bug that I'm going to be seeing flying around the feedlot or the dairy barn or the hog barn?
No, not at all. Actually, that's one of the first things that people ask, and I tell people fly parasites are tiny. They're like the size of a little gnat, and they're actually nocturnal soil insects. So you're not going to see them flying around bothering you, the animals. They're going to be working in the manure or moist, wet, decayed feed, those kind of areas. Any kind of protein matter. That's where these parasites are going to be living, and they're going to be burrowed into the soil, and they're going to be looking for those cocoons, the pupae. That's the right term you would say is the pupae of the fly, and they're going to find that and sting it and lay their eggs inside. Stopping the problem at its source by preventing that fly from hatching into an adult.
So if I can't see these things because they're buried in manure and feed decay, how can I tell if it's actually working?
Well, I tell people everybody knows about honeybees, right? I mean, everyone knows they work for pollination. And there's nobody questions it. Fly parasites are the same idea. They're host specific to the fly. That means, they do their job regardless. They're going to go after that pupa. That's the only sole purpose in life because they need to reproduce and they find that pupa of the fly and they sting it and lay their eggs inside and that prevents them from hatching. So over the program, it builds. And remember, it's not just bugs alone. It's a full program working together. It's also, the parasites are handling the source. And then, of course, using your baits and your sprays strategically, that's part of the secondary part of the program. And that's how you see the difference.
So how do you apply these parasitic flies?
Super simple. These bags come in the mail and you open up these quart-sized bags and you just sprinkle them out like salt and pepper. People, depending on their situation, they can ride in a side-by-side and just open up this bag and just sprinkling them, every so many feet, just getting even distribution around your whole operation. Because, these parasites are very forgiving, just like we talk about honeybees, right? People get these boxes of honeybees, they put them out in their fields and they let them go to town, they let them go to work. And it's the same thing with our fly parasites. As long as we're just evenly distributing around the whole operation, whether it be fence edges, manure piles, lagoon areas, in the pins, drover alley work lanes, in dairy situations, same thing. Because they can move within a mile radius. So as long as we're just getting these bugs out there, you're going to be doing a fantastic job.
So how do I get a hold of these? Are they delivered to my farm then?
Yes, you give us a call, talk to us, and I'll recommend, how much bugs you're going to need for your particular situation. And yeah, well, we'll just put them in the mail. They come in a box, and once you receive them, just make sure you keep them in a cool place, in the shade or any place where they're not exposed to sunlight for a long period of time until you can get them out within that day or two, and yeah, just get them out there.
So if I
Super
miss an
simple.
application or I run out of these bugs, does the whole program just fall apart?
No, not at all, not at all. No, I mean missing one shipment is not going to destroy everything, but consistency is key. I mean, so flies breed fast. Every a female housefly can lay up to 1,000 to 1,500 eggs in her lifetime, and so you can see how fast the growth can happen, and that's within 7 to 10 days. And so if you give them a few weeks of uninterrupted breeding, then yes, I mean you will eventually feel it, and that's why we set customers up on a regular basis. We give them on a shipping schedule, and that way it's automatic, so they don't have to think about it. Once we get you on a program, we pretty much figure out, okay, you're going to start from April till the 1st of October, let's just say, in your region, and then that's how we get the problem solved there. That's why you're not missing your shipments, and we're making sure you're getting consistent releases.
So do these work year round, or is it just working during the summertime?
Well, it's most effective in the summertime. I mean, just like every other insect, you will have flies or any kind of insects. They'll die in the winter. But just like every insect, they overwinter as well. You have those few that survive, and it's the same thing with our parasitic wasps. People up in Minnesota or Wisconsin say, "How in the world do we have flies after the brutal winter that we just had?" And I said, "Well, it's just Mother Nature. That's how it works. That's you're getting these bugs out in Mother Nature and out in the open, and they figure out how to protect themselves for the wintertime. Most of them, like I said, don't make it. I guess it's like natural selection or the survival of the fittest, they say. And so
So
yeah, that's why they come up every year.
so what's the biggest mistake that producers make when they start on this program?
Um, I would say starting too late is one of the big ones. If you're going to call me in July or August when flies are just all over the place and it's unbearable, then yeah, that's going to be an issue. It's going to be hard to control them. We can, I mean, but we're just going to have to take some drastic measures. Like let's say if somebody was getting a recommendation of a certain amount of parasitic wasps that they need for their place for that week, we're going to probably have to quadruple, quintuple it. And also get aggressive with the other tools as well. The program works best when you get ahead of it, and that's early spring. We don't want to wait too long. And the other mistake is not being educated. On what type of flies they might have. People use because we also, yes, we talk about fly parasites, but we're program oriented. We want to make sure that it's not just the bugs alone, but we're also educating them on the tools. So that's what happens a lot of times too. They're not educated about the types of flies. And let's just say you have a type of fly like a biting stable fly, which you have early on in the season. People will use the wrong chemical, for example, and I think it doesn't work, and they get discouraged. If you have a house fly, which is another type of fly, and they're using the wrong chemical for that one, and or it's reversed the way they apply it for the different types of flies. So that's where we come into to help out. And so that's another big mistake people do. They might buy all these chemicals and all these things, and they're just using it for the wrong type of fly, or they're using the wrong type of product. Those are the, I guess, 2 points of mistakes I see.
Can your program be useful in a pasture setting rather than maybe a feedlot or a containment setting?
Sure. I mean, again, it's like I told you all earlier about the honeybees. We all know they work, and it's just a natural. They're a natural enemy to the fly. So that's getting any kind of populations out there is always going to be beneficial, no matter what. Yes, in a passive situation, you are more of an open area, but there are some areas where, like, you have mineral feeders or places where the cattle congregate, and those are the prime areas that you want to put these bugs out there to help. Now, do you need them as much as you would in a confinement? No. We just want to a lot of times in a past situation we might go on a monthly basis where we are recommending these parasites just to get some numbers out there and just to help with their overall program. It's not going to hurt them. And again, people need to understand when they're buying let's say chemicals or other types of products for fly control. I mean, they're spending a lot of money, and ours is very economical. I mean, we're not talking a lot of money here. We're just, again, this is part of their program, their tools to the toolbox. That's what we're trying to get people educated about, that save some room in their budget, not just to focus on just one chemical or one solution, because there's never going to be that way. There's no magic bullet for fly control. You have to use a series of things, and that's what we're trying to do: get people on the right track, on the right program, and they're using all the tools.
Wonderful. One last question for you. How long before you actually see the results of your product working?
hmm Again, I'm going to go back to the honeybees. So nobody questions it, right? Everybody knows that honeybees have their sole purpose in life is to pollinate, and our fly parasites are the same concept. They're host specific to the fly, and they do work. There's no question about it. But just like any program, every operation is different. There's different circumstances, different fly pressure, different environments, and that's why the program isn't just the bugs alone. It's a full approach. Getting the parasites out consistently, and then using your tools strategically. Sprays when you need them, baits when the situation calls for it. Not just spraying 3 times a week, for example. When you put it all together the right way, it works.